The International Monetary Fund staff have reached agreements with Niger Republic's government on new financing of around $133 million and a third review of another facility that could lead to a disbursement of about $27 million, the IMF has said. Now, the agreement is subject to the approval of the IMF Executive Board, which is due to discuss it in July. The funding under the IMF's Resilience and Sustainability Facility is to support structural reform efforts and investments to addressing rising risks associated with climate change in the country. The latest review of Niger's 3-year extended credit facility should release funds to help cover its external financing needs. This morning, we're being joined by Aly Khan Satchu, Africa Geo-Economist and CEO, Reach Management. It's nice to have you join us, Aly Khan, on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So we've seen over time that some African countries have struggled to meet the requirements for the bailout funds and, of course, implementing reforms. But then looking at what obtains with Niger Republic, what are the specific conditions in terms of the new financing program that IMF and the country have agreed to?
So I think it was basically a reform of the macroeconomic management of the economy. There was some tax reforms, digitization, basically, sort of governance-related, moving Niger's governance structures more into the 21st century. They were highly complimentary in the note about Niger's progress, and I think this is a significant statement of affirmation for the current government.
All right. Now, according to data, about 42.9% of Nigerians live below the poverty line, earning just about $2 a day. And while 83% of them live in the rural areas as opposed to the urban area. So with this $133 million funding program, or bailout as it were, to Niger, do you think it will address the socio-economic challenges and, of course, developmental, infrastructural developmental challenges that it is faced with?
So just to contextualize some of that, of course, Niger is in the lower group of countries in terms of per capita income. As you said, 40 to 41% of people live below the poverty line. It is in the Sahel where we've had these climate change challenges that have been happening. So, there are a lot of challenges that it's facing. Give you some more context, they've built a pipeline which I think cost approximately $6 billion. This pipeline goes to Benin, and they'll be exporting up to 100,000 barrels of oil per day in the not too distant future. It's essentially a livestock-based and agriculture-based economy, but it also has the 4th largest reserves of uranium. So I think this show of support by the IMF is part a geo-economic transaction. The issue is around uranium supplies. The biggest supply of uranium to global markets currently is Russia. And we know the situation and the potential sanctioning of Russia that might further occur. And I think this is giving global markets an option on more supplies coming out of Niger. So I think you've got to look at it in that context. Niger is going to grow probably in double digits next year because of that oil exports coming on stream. There is a low base effect. So I think there is potential here. And whilst, this is supporting, the deficit, at the same time, we're within good parameters. Debt to GDP is about 51%. And then remember, the size of the economy is not that big. So if you get a burst of growth, that's going to bring debt to GDP down quite dramatically.
You said that Niger has potential in terms of uranium and other minerals, as it were. There's iron ore, there's gold deposits. You've also mentioned petroleum and, of course, palm oil, which are worthy investments that investors can invest in. But then why is it that investments into the country are few and far between? Because you would expect that with a country with so much potentials, it would have quality investors or investments coming into the country. Its GDP, as it were, as regards the reports for 2022, is just around $33 billion. So it has huge potential. Why are there impediments, or why are there challenges as regards attracting FDIs and opening up the economy of this particular country?
So firstly, I think it's geography in the sense that this is probably the largest landlocked African country. And the pipeline they're building, for example, through Benin is the longest pipeline, I think, anywhere in the world. So you've got that geographical, logistical challenge of getting to these opportunities. And part of the IMF program was to create a more conducive environment for investors. And I think that's very much part of the reform program. So I think what's going to happen now is you'll have a more level playing field for investors. You've outlined the types of opportunities which are there, and all of those opportunities are pretty interesting in the current global context. Palm oil, for example, it's a staple for the world markets. Those prices have gone up in an interesting way. Uranium, increased reliance on nuclear power is what we're witnessing. The oil, there's a ready market for that, particularly in the context of the sanctioning of Russian oil. So overall, I think, look, there have been challenges. It's been a bit off the radar. If you're thinking of where the radar is in Africa, Niger is off the radar. But I think this IMF program plus recent developments mean that Niger is going to be an interesting investment destination, in my view, over the next 5 and 10 years.
Do you think that the Nigerian government will also be focusing on the issue of climate change? Because according to reports, temperature is said to rise 1.5 times higher than anywhere in the world, which means they're also going through issues with climate changes affecting the agriculture and every other potential that could come out of there. So do you think that with this fund, they'll also be focusing or dealing with the associated risks as regards climate change in the country?
So at the biggest risk, Niger is in the epicenter of the area which is at the biggest risk of climate change, and that's the Sahel region. And climate change is essentially triggering a whole bunch of negative cascade effects as people find it more difficult to make a living in the current environment. You see increased in levels of insurgency. The Sahel is renowned for that. So there are many complexities that Niger is having to face, and the wider Sahel region. So yes, it's very much front and center. However, I think what we will find is, in particular, increased European support, maybe because of concerns around migration, and therefore a desire to secure the southern flank of Europe, as it were, by creating more opportunity in those countries. I think we'll find support, but you're quite correct. The Sahel is facing a climate storm, a perfect storm when it comes to climate change.
All right, let's quickly look at the banking sector, as it were. Banking penetration in the Niger Republic is just about 6.3%. Even according to one report, maybe just about 6 banks operate in Niger as we speak. So is there a way by which this financing program or this finance program can help stimulate Niger's banking sector and, of course, create some sort of enabling environment for the private sector growth initiative that the government is actually looking out for?
So I think, the silver bullet for this type of country where, you've got people spread out over vast distances is the mobile phone. And if I were the IMF, I would be encouraging the authorities to liberalize the environment around the mobile phone and mobile banking, and therefore give people an opportunity to join the banking sector through the phone. The mobile phone collapsed channel costs. This is an underbanked country. I think you've got to find solutions which fit with that economy. But I think ultimately this story is all about the mobile phone. And that's the way to increase banking inclusivity in such a country like Niger.
All right, thank you so much, Aly Khan Satchu. Of course, we are going to be following this up to see if the executive board will consider the modalities and approve this fund for Niger, because it's very important for them. We will probably bring you on board to discuss on that. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.